Good morning, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to AI News Review, daily one that we're doing for a couple of days more, today and tomorrow this week, because of Thanksgiving. But welcome. We have John, Tim, and Pankaj today. Paul might join us as well. And a set of very cool articles from Perplexity announcement, Microsoft pushing the semantic graphs a little further, and an interesting use case and the like. So very cool set of articles that we will share with you. So let's start with the first one, Pankaj.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Runway. So Runway has introduced a new model called Frames. So it offers creators a good range of stylistic control.
Yes. So we have John on this one. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to make the case for this for important, not because it's unique, but the quality is just phenomenal. Akash, if you could just kind of scroll through as I'm talking about this, just scroll down in terms of the different images. They are really striking, and if you click on any of the videos, I mean, look at the quality of these things, and whether it's landscapes or styles from previous movies or books or images. I mean, it's just phenomenal in terms of the quality and the visual nature of so many of these interactions. I think that's one of the things that robots are bringing is a combination of voice, that you're speaking to them, as well as looking at just unbelievable images. And I think that those two things together are really the path forward, as TikTok and others have shown us. So I rated this as important just from the fantastic quality that's available through their APIs, and you can get started right away on this.
Yeah,
also, you can't. It's slowly rolling out through their existing customer base. Sorry, it's not.
Yeah, I would say. Oh, go ahead, Luda.
Yeah, we need Adam, who always argues optional. What do you think, Tim?
I was on the essential for those in the video business, and I was going to be probably optional for the rest. I could be talked into important, as John says. It is phenomenal. In fact, I happened to see this last night and happened to be talking to a movie director, and they were just blown away by it, just absolutely blown away. And raised the interesting question of what's it going to be like to be a kid in 30 years when you can't tell reality from fiction? And I said, well, we have some of that now. But,
yeah, I was going to say 30 years, but yeah, like 30 seconds. Yeah,
but it is. I can go with important because that's still not required, and it is beautiful. It's hard to argue with just these stunning vision and videos that they come up with.
I can also maybe get talked into important, but we have a little bit of a we need to maintain our standards of consistency.
Well, I'm the hard grader generally.
Yes, because
that's why I said I think if you're in the video business, it's essential, and if you're not in the video business, I still think John has sort of swayed me because as an AI leader, which I am, so you really need to be aware of just how good this stuff is, because you're going to get a lot of different information about where AI is, and part of it is just being enmeshed in the milieu and just seeing this stuff and sort of being aware of it. So I think it's important.
Okay, let's put it as important and proceed to the next one.
The next one comes from LMI, and it talks about how LMI incubated its own GenAI tool before going to market with it.
Yes, Tim, what do you think about this?
It's interesting. There's very little detail, so I would give this an optional for that reason alone, and also because I think the government use should be one of the primary uses of LLMs. I think there's just, I spent a decade or more at Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a federal contractor, and the work I'm doing now with Manat does involve work with government entities of various types, some of it. And, governments are all about forms and paper and lots of text. And so these things should just be killer for both for the contractors, which LMI is, and for the government itself. And so things like reading RFPs and RFIs, these are procurement vehicles, things that the government uses to buy services, and understanding the unbelievable amounts of policy and guidance and various documents that float around the government. They're just perfect for it. So I think it's a hugely important idea and trend. This is, just one thing from one vendor that without much detail though, and a use case, again, summarization documents and things like that, as what's John's phrase, a miracle every day. That's just passé now. That's just, oh yeah, of course you're summarizing hundreds of thousands of pages of document. Everybody does that now.
Yeah. Okay, optional. What do you think, John? Optional? Agree?
Yeah, optional. I think this is this article is particularly bad. I don't think it tells you a lot. It's poorly written and so forth. I think we can be confident that a robot didn't write this, because a robot would have done a lot better job.
Okay, optional it is. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from Anthropic, and Anthropic has introduced the model context protocol.
Yeah, so Paul is not here. Let me take that one. So it is actually interesting. They're open sourcing this new protocol that essentially allows the AI assistants that you built connect with data very easily, databases, repositories, various business tools, and development environments. So it's the infrastructural connectivity that they're after. It's nitty gritty, and that's why it's probably optional for the AI leader. But if looking from the development perspective, I think it is important. So I'm looking for your feedback. I can be talked into important on this one. What do you think, Tim, John?
I think I was sort of on the optional bandwagon. I think it's an interesting statement to make an API open source, because what's the alternative? If you can't see the API, it's not very useful to people. So I'm not sure what it means for an API to be open source unless the implementation, the source code that implements the API is also available, which they didn't say. So they do have these servers that they created as open source, but this is a product announcement. And this is, if anything, Anthropic trying to create a lock-in, right? As all of them, I'm sure, will do, because an API and a set of servers that support that API means you're pretty much locked into them. You can say what you want about, well, anybody can implement that API, but this seems to me like a straightforward product announcement. Interesting, but a product announcement. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Okay. John, okay with optional?
Optional it is.
Okay. Yeah. Tim, I think if Ankash, you scroll a little bit down, what they are actually opening up, they're opening the specification, the apps, and the open source repository of this type of service. So the frameworks of several sorts. So they are opening up more than you would expect, and that will advance the developers' work.
Yeah,
but I agree with you. Optional it is. Okay.
I still think it's just mostly a product announcement.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go next.
Okay, the next one comes from Perplexity. So Quarter has partnered with Perplexity, and it is offering Quarter's API to power first of its kind analysis tool for retail investors.
Yes, John, that's an interesting announcement here.
Yeah, I was going to give this an optional, incredibly important area. Quarter is one of the leaders in terms of AI analysis of earnings calls, previous or current. and the notion of putting that into the Perplexity tool. So you can imagine, as you're looking at any company, right, you can look at the company itself, you can look at it from the point of view of an investor, point of view of what the products are. So I think we're going to have a very interesting, we have a very interesting set of real-time expertise and analysis on the nature of what these companies are doing. And it's going to be a combination of unstructured, semi-structured data and the traditional structured data. But I thought this particular, partnership hookup between these two, I would put as optional, but very interesting, especially obviously if you're in the securities analysis business, this is essential. But I was going to give it an optional.
Yeah, and John, one thing I'm very interested in is, and it's probably already happening, is how aggressively hedge funds are going to invest in robot assessments of earnings stuff. So am I going to fund 3 or 4 robots who are constantly managing, interpreting what historically was done by super high-end analysts after earnings call?
Yeah. Although the analysts there are paid shillings compared to the consulting companies doing data rooms for private equity, which is where I suspect the real first action is going to be, because those are $1 million a month kind of deals. So there's a lot of money at stake there. Yeah, but I agree. It's optional. Again, this is actually a product a partnership announcement by quarter. So this is really just a marketing piece. It's interesting, as John says, if you're in financial services, very important. But outside of financial services, again, unbelievable that we'd say it, but it's sort of ho-hum. That's okay. So they're reading 10Qs and 10Ks and summarizing them and getting the data out. Great. Everybody does that, don't they?
But for Perplexity, you have to say, right, this is an interesting strategic move. They're bringing quite a bit of content available through them, and all kinds of analysis can be done and the like. So this boosts their platform, certainly.
Yeah, we don't know if it's exclusive either, though. And again, I suspect there'll be 5 others like Quarter that do this. So I'm sure if OpenAI and the other leaders, Claude, want something like this, they'll have it, no problem.
Yeah.
But notice, Lou, that part of what Perplexity is doing, they're getting verticalized really quickly as they go more head-to-head with Google. I mean, Google's got their aims on these guys.
Yep.
If you look at online advertisers, financial services are right up there. I think they're behind cars and pharma. The idea of having something like Quarter, and then folks like Fidelity and Vanguard and so forth would start to advertise back through Perplexity. Yeah. So I think that's
a good, interesting strategic play on Perplexity's part. It's unclear to me how long it will remain, a differentiator.
Yeah, Michael Novak says, will Bloomberg be next to announce?
Yeah,
I do think you raise a really interesting point, Paul, which is that we're going to see more and more stuff which used to be batch analysis, like reviewing these things, become a real-time, multiple agent evaluation. Lost Paul, but anyway, all right.
Getting there. Okay, this is optional. Let's go on.
Okay, the next one comes from Microsoft, and it talks about lazy graph RAG. So it's setting a new standard for quality and cost.
This is fascinating. Tim, what did you think?
Well, so I think if you're a data scientist or data analysis involved in AI development, this is essential. If you're beyond that, I would rate this important in a similar way to we talked about the first article. I just think it's important to be aware of the advances and how quickly they're occurring to get a sense of how you should be dealing with this market. And this one is one that I'm surprised hasn't come along before. This is sort of back to the future, because what they're really doing is, instead of using LLMs to do the expensive part of RAG, which is the embedding, as it's called, of various parts of your data in order that you can query it before you query the LLM. So I don't want to go through the whole treatise on RAG, but it's expensive because you're using LLM embeddings. And, way back in the day, I mean, I've been in natural language processing for, since before most of the people doing it today were born, let's say. And NLP we were doing 15 years ago. And 10 years ago, this thing called topic analysis came out, and that's what they're really doing here. So you can use NLP to create a graph of all the topics in a very long document. And you don't need an LLM for that. So effectively, you can create your graph at a much, much lower cost by using simpler technologies, and then use that graph to drive the LLM. So you're really sequestering the LLM, except for the parts where the LLM is really good, like creating the answer and generating the right answer from the chunks of text that you get. So, and there's a few other things in there. So it's very interesting. If you're a data scientist, essential. If you're an AI leader, I think you should read this to be aware of how quickly things are moving. And this is another one of these potential game changers in costs. I mean, the costs are, and the performance was higher and the cost was dramatically lower. So.
Yeah, I rated it as important because of that, because it's actually pushes the RAG that is now getting to be used across the board forward, because it's less costly and much better. If you scroll on to an example that the simple response to a query, and they do give you a comparison of the cost. It's way less expensive
and the quality,
and much better, because they do the sub query responses and mapping, so it's much more extensive, gives them much more detail. On the left it's a regular response, no, a little further, I'm sorry, and on the right, down, Ankash, down. Anyway, you read the article, it's worth reading.
Yeah, I think this whole thing of where the cost and semantics are going to be in the value network of these AI things is so dynamic and important.
Yeah.
And let's see.
Ashish.
Interesting. Ashish is saying that Microsoft are working on one source RAG, right? Multiple sources, complex relationships. Yeah, where the semantics is going to be.
Yeah. This is, for me, this is super important. I don't want to put it essential because it's just a step in the right direction, but it will massively improve what we're doing with semantic understanding.
And this is the other thing that's super important. Again, it's sort of more for model development and how these things are used, but important, I think, even for AI leaders to understand is this is the future. Whether and if we can generate these graphs from technology rather than having to handcraft them, which is what's had to been done in the past. And the problem with graph databases is somebody has to put the graph together. Then that can be an enormous advantage in eliminating hallucinations, putting common sense, as it's called, into these models, which is one of the biggest complaints about LLMs today. So this is potentially really groundbreaking across a couple of dimensions.
Right, but they say that this is not alone, it wouldn't work. It's a combination of the regular RAG and graph RAG, right? So it's the...
Well, they say that will be better.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons that are detailed, but the point is that being able to create knowledge graphs at low cost that can integrate with LLMs, I think that's the future architecture.
Yep, totally. Okay, important it is, or should we move it to essential? No, it's not essential. Important.
No. I think essential for data scientists and doing AI. Yeah. Definitely essential for them, but not essential for the AI leader, but important. It's worth reading.
Okay. Okay, let's go next one. Important. It's a little dense. Like it takes a little bit of reading.
A little struggle is good. That's how we learn.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Next one, Anka.
Well, Michael asked an interesting question. Is it limited to Microsoft infrastructure? I don't know, Michael. Maybe now, but that it's obviously people, as they learn the technique, could put it into other infrastructures.
No, this is conceptual. I don't know whether.
Yeah, it's not limited to Microsoft. I mean, they may have implementations done by their research group, and they're obviously going to do them on Microsoft technology. But the idea can be done on any. They're using MapReduce. This is the oldest technology in machine learning, basically.
Right, and yeah, they're doing a lot of NLP, and this is all open source. Yeah.
Lots
Okay.
and lots of places get that.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go next.
Okay, the last one that we have for today talks about how AI agents are stuck in first gear, but 2025 is expected to change that.
Paul is not here, right? Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll introduce it. Okay, so this comes from Madrana. This is an incubator seed, very early VC firm in California. So they have invested in agents and believe that even though the agents, as we know, haven't been really adopted across the board, but there's a lot of startups working on infrastructure, various tools to make them safer, make them more robust, and whatnot. And they detail this in this article, making a statement or prognostication that agents will be very used in 2025. So I found it an interesting read, especially if you are into agents, but I think it's still optional. What do you think, Tim and John?
Yeah, pretty much optional for me. I mean, this is an ad for founders, right? That's what venture capitalists have learned to do. They put together these thought pieces that are basically saying, hey, we want some companies to found AI agent. We want some founders to found AI agent companies, and we'll fund them. It's a good plan. And they give enough meat on the bones to start people thinking. So if you're a young person, or any person, I guess, and you're sitting at your desk, either at a big company or another company, or not at a company, thinking, what am I going to do next? They're giving you some ideas here. I don't think there's anything all that breakthrough here. We've been talking about agents forever. Whether they're going to be important next year, the year after, as one of my favorite quotes goes, never confuse a clear view in a short distance. So the view is pretty clear that agents are going to ultimately be extremely important. How long it's going to take before they really dominate the landscape is anybody's guess, in my opinion. And Paul's been saying all year how little they've made an impact. But of course, it depends how you categorize it. You could argue that there's lots of things that are agents, and then you can make the universe bigger. Yeah. But I would call this optional for the AI.
Yeah, for now, certainly. But it's a good point. So there's a lot of creation going on in the background. At some point, all this stuff will come together.
Yeah. Sure. If you're looking to be a founder, these are the articles to read.
Yeah.
Other than that,
yeah, I was reading it and saying, oh, there's this startup and that idea. It's just
but you have to remember they're talking their book. The famous story is of John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco, and they became super famous in the 90s for a bunch of reasons. One of which was they were buying a company a week, I want to say. I mean, they were just an incredible acquisition powerhouse. And the story, I can't tell the veracity of this, but it was told by enough people that either it was a really powerful meme or it's actually true, was that Chambers just viewed VC as his research. So rather than actually set up R&D, he would just go to the bars with the VCs and say, we're thinking in this area, like here. We're thinking in agents, we're thinking in this area, we're thinking in that area. And, next month there'd be 6 companies doing that, and he would just buy the best one a couple of years later.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah, definitely optional for me.
Yeah, optional. Okay, that concludes our news for today. Whole bunch of optionals and 2 importance. That's not bad for Sleepy Tuesday.
Yeah, and could I just say, noontime today, we're going to launch our corporate buyer's guide. It'll be a LinkedIn Live event. So Eastern. So please feel free to join us on that. Michael, Ashish, Vivek, thanks for participating. I just want to highlight one thing that you said, Tim, that I think we're going to see more and more, especially with the new Trump administration coming in. When you step back and look at government through a wide-angle lens, much of what government does, the people part of government, not the payments part, is I think highly susceptible to being automated by an LLM. Basically, any bureaucracy that is, it's all wins work, to use our terminology. And it's much of it is grown so large that it's really not easily accessible, and this will make it easily accessible. So only 17% of the federal government budget is personnel, but I would expect that to be, highly susceptible to automation, as well as other things like.
I would limit my ideals in that direction, because actually they're incredibly understaffed. So what happens now is backlogs. The paperwork just doesn't get done because there aren't enough people. So my sense is, while there could be some reduction, what will really happen is, hopefully, if things go well, some reduction in the backlogs. Because right now it can take 9 months to get something done with the government. Yeah. And, it's crazy, but it's because there's already been tremendous reduction. And again, the real expense is, since I was part of it, the Beltway Bandit side. So if you look at an organization like the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, they only have 5,000 employees, which is barely enough to keep the lights on for somebody pumping out $1 trillion a year. All the work is done by contractors, over 120,000 contractors. And the question is, are they going to do better or worse in this new administration? And my bet would be better.
We'll see. Okay, we are coming to the end of the half hour. Join us at noon. It's a LinkedIn event on GAI Insights. So find us, join us. It's 29 vendors, a lot of trends discussion, and use cases as well. So it will be an informative announcement. So please join us. And so this week we will be on tomorrow, but then off Thursday and Friday. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.